howdy there, pipe pals and gals. Well, howdy there, pipe pals. Holy Smokin' Pipe Padre with you on this 22nd of August. Queenship of Mary. Pipe video. Yep. Okay, so let's get started here. Okay, so let me open up a little liquid libation here. Look, drinking some liquid death. And they call it liquid death because it kills your thirst. Yeah. Ah, that's good. Ah, that's good. Okay, so, and I am smoking tonight. I'm attempting to. A tobacco that I opened I don't know how long ago, maybe could be a year ago. Testing 1, 2, 3. I'm using a new microphone. Last week or last month or whatever, 2 weeks ago, I was using a Shure SM7B, but I don't know how the recording quality really was. So anyway, I'm using a new DJI wireless. It's brand new from DJI, and I got to say, I've been trying it out this afternoon on my homily channel, and I'm really happy with the quality of the microphone so far. So I thought I'd just go ahead and kind of keep it simple tonight. I finally got a new interface for the Shure SM7B for the iPhone. The interface I was using was designed for laptops or iPads. So but I just didn't want to open it up and go through all the troubleshooting and all the headaches of setting up a new piece of gadgetry for my video tonight. I just said, hey, you know what? I got things I want to say, want to visit with all of you. So there you have it. There you have it. So yeah, Carolina Red Flake, Cornell and Deal. Such a deal. Cornell and Deal, Carolina Red Flake. Now, I've been talking about, if you've watched the videos last couple of times, I think I talked a little bit about maybe possibly finding some Orlick Golden Slice. Because a lot of people say that that's kind of a summertime blend. It's kind of citrusy, and yeah. Now, this obviously is spicy. And as far as tobaccos go, it's got perique in it, so I guess that's why they call it, the Carolina Red Flake, kind of like the Carolina Ghost Peppers, kind of things like that. It's not like, hot like a pepper, but it has a little bit of a spicy kick to it. Not bad. So, and still has a fair deal of moisture to it, so it's fine. And then I'm smoking it in this anniversary pipe. This was a pipe I got 3 years ago this month when I first got up here to the lake, and I went over to, and now it's the rest in peace, Old Tinderbox in Reno. And a nice store. It was a nice store. But COVID, unfortunately, hastened its demise. So it's no longer among the quick. It's gone into the dustbin of history. Excuse me. Trying to swallow water and breathe at the same time doesn't quite work. So, that'll wake you up. Okay. So, again, Greetings to all, salutations. I think I've already made a video for October. Boy, excuse me. Oh boy. Okay. But I thought I'd get on here I had a couple of things I really wanted to talk about. I probably got some more. I fired up some people tonight on YouTube, so yeah, I was kind of stirring it up a little bit. Maybe I'll talk a little bit about that. And, it's sad business, unfortunately, what I'll probably lead off with tonight. We've had a little gal who's been missing for the last 3 weeks, roughly, 2.5, 3 weeks. Her name was Kylie Rodney, and she was at a kind of a gathering for a lot of young people on August 6th, and unfortunately, she never made it home. And it looks like they found her finally today in the river, or not the river, the reservoir up near Truckee, Prosser Reservoir. And it's sad, and again, we don't know all the details because it's when I'm going to say murky, yeah, the waters were murky, but there seems to be some murkiness surrounding this case. And again, you wonder what's going on. It just seems like from, and I'm going to say it, from the incompetency of the Sheriff's Search and Rescue. And again, I'm a big law enforcement person. I support law enforcement, but the sheriff from Nevada County is a big fat, lesbo gal who's completely incompetent. I don't care if she's really a lesbo, but she's just a big fat incompetent person. And I remember last year during the wildfires, she was just totally useless. She was about as useless as, wet toilet paper, okay? It was like, shut up, lady, get somebody on there that was giving these briefings that had some real information that was going to help people. And this person was just a total train wreck. And the same, say a year later, now they're trying to talk about, their search and rescue efforts, and sadly, it's a disgrace. It's a disgrace. They said they had like 20,000 man hours, and this company that's an independent couple of guys called Adventure with Purpose, I guess AWP, Adventures with Purpose. They found the car and her remains, possibly her remains in the car, within 35 minutes. Just saying. So if they had kind of said, well, we don't have the expertise, or we, blah, 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 or we at least admitted that they're not really capable of, but again, it just seemed kind of like, well, wait a minute, you've spent 20,000 man hours trying to find this little gal, and these guys come along and they had some drone footage, all you drone enthusiasts out there, some drone surveillance, and again, another independent person who they were like, hey, that looks like there's something underneath the water, And so these other guys from AWP, Adventures with Purpose, they said, well, that looks promising. Let's go check it out. And within 35 minutes, they found it. So, again, if Sheriff Grady Judd, if you're listening, boy, they sure could use your help out here. These people are clueless. That's all I'm going to say. We need a real sheriff out here, and we don't have one. And the person that's occupying the chair must be a big chair for that. Never mind. So anyway, obviously I don't have a lot of positive things to say about Sheriff Over the Moon. Let's just put it that way. But they found her vehicle, but there seems to be, the kid was only 16. And I know somebody that actually knows the family personally. They're tore up about it, as I'm sure, lots of people that knew this young girl. Apparently she just graduated from high school and was on her way to Santa Cruz, UC Santa Cruz, I think, going to study veterinary medicine, I guess, or at least get into, kind of a pre-med kind of a thing. But apparently, she was drinking, and clearly, well, some people, okay, not clearly because we don't have an autopsy toxicology report yet, but people that were there noticed that she seemed to have been pretty inebriated. And the reason why it's starting to, not pass the smell test is because a lot of the people that were kind of interviewed were kind of given these really off the wall, bizarre, nervous kind of interviews. And apparently, what's going to come out is that the adults that were responsible for this gathering were supplying alcohol to minors. And she was clearly 16. Okay, she wasn't 18. She was 16. Like I said, apparently a pretty smart kid. But anyway, but she clearly, or not clearly, but she was, according to some people, she seemed to be, intoxicated. And whether she was, was on her own, cognition, she'd been over drinking, got a little way too much, or somebody slipped her a Mickey or something like that. We just don't know. We just don't know right now. And there's some crazy, well, not crazy, but some really weird. They pulled the vehicle out, I think it was yesterday or today, and they had it all draped and covered in certain areas, and it was just like, why is this being? Why are they? It just seemed like a lot of stuff just wasn't adding up. Wasn't adding up. So anyway, it's just really sad that this little gal. One of my friends. They're probably listening to this now so they can go to sleep because they told me, I really like your videos. They help me to sleep. Okay, good night now. Hope you sleep well. But they said, they think that what happened was he was under the influence and she just drove off the road and drove into the reservoir, and that's what happened. And maybe that's what happened, but it doesn't seem. I mean, yes, that's where they found the car, but it doesn't make quite sense to. I don't even see a road along the shore there. It's like, I could see it if they were driving, if there was an actual road that they could have driven off on into the reservoir, but it doesn't look like there was an actual road. Maybe there was. I just couldn't see it. But apparently they were like, maybe 100 yards from any kind of road. So how could they have had I don't know, maybe they hit a deer, maybe they tried to avoid hitting a raccoon and they hit a tree. Just don't really know yet. Maybe they'll be able to piece the puzzle pieces together to where it makes sense. But one of the things that I think is starting to emerge is that the people that were in charge of this party probably realized that they might have a little bit of blood on their hands, because if they allowed. And apparently, from what I understood, she was like the last person to even leave this gathering. She was all by herself, apparently. This just doesn't sound good. So somebody knows that they're responsible for this kid, and they're like trying to walk away from it so they don't get blamed. But I think there's going to be some criminal negligence coming up here in the not too distant future, possibly. So, but it's a tragedy. It's sad. We've been certainly praying for her at Mass every day, and hoping that I was hoping that until I talked to this person that actually knew that they were kind of like an uncle to her, so they knew her. And I talked to the person last week. I won't mention their name, but. I said, well, could it just be that she was just having a, bad day, bad week, bad month, and they were just mad, and they just kind of like, well, I'm out of here and I don't want to talk to anybody anymore. And they were mad. Kind of like a family dispute kind of a thing. And he said, no, this kid had a lot to live for, and their family was pretty tight, pretty, normal. Nothing out of, not a lot of drama as far as he was saying, nothing that would have prompted her to do something like that. There was a case a couple of years back in the same area. I mean, I think our Sacramento area, there was a gal named Sherry Papini, and apparently she was, disappeared, and everybody thought the worst, that she was going to turn up in some, forest somewhere, unfortunately in Northern California, whatever. But it turned out that, she finally turned up a year later and kind of claimed that she was abducted, but the story didn't hold up, and it was sort of like, no, the gal basically left in a snit, had a fight with the husband, and decided they wanted a new life, and then it turned out the new life didn't work out, and so they were trying to figure a way to get back into their old life, and yeah, kind of one of those things. So I was kind of hoping that, there was a family dispute, and then, a little bit of emotion and drama, and the kid left, but they eventually, see the light of day and, say this is stupid and come back. And the guy I talked to last week said, no, that's not what happened. And I said, well, okay. And then this other friend of mine said, no, I think I know what happened, and it turns out that they were right. But the only thing is, I don't see how it's, to me, okay, and again, I'm just Monday morning quarterbacking on this whole thing, and I can certainly reserve the right to be completely wrong and all wet on this whole thing, but it kind of seems like maybe something bad happened. And again, I'm just speculating based on what I know, and what I know is about that much. But from what I've seen again, kind of putting the puzzle pieces together, the story they're trying to kind of weave doesn't work either. But to me, it almost seems kind of like maybe she had either an overdose of some kind. She passed out. If she had been drinking that much or something like that, and she died, and they were trying to dispose of her and the evidence to make it look more like an accident, because the people that are responsible are probably going, oh my gosh, this kid died, and I'm responsible for this. Maybe they didn't out and out kill her, but kids do things. They get drunk. Maybe they do a little bit of, maybe she did some coke and something else, and maybe, you never know. And again, the little kid, well, I keep calling her a little kid. She's only 16, but she was a young girl, no doubt about it. But the thing is, she looked like she was like 89 pounds soaking wet. She looked like, to me, she looked undernourished. She looked kind of malnourished, a lot of kids today, they're pretty chunky. A lot of them are really, most of them are morbidly obese, But this kid was like a little waif, like, golly, there's no meat on that kid's bones. And so again, if somebody is not careful with alcohol and whatever else other substances they might have been ingesting, they could have had a little mitral heart attack or something, and all of a sudden everyone's like, uh-oh. And I think, to me, it almost seems like, because again, if they were drunk and they were driving on a road and they drove off the road, and the road was right there on the reservoir, that would make kind of sense. So like, okay, been under the influence myself, as many of you know, and yeah, you could, especially at night in a place you don't know, especially kind of those really narrow roads up there in the mountains, and it's dark up there, and you think you're going one way, and you're inebriated, you're under the influence, and you make the wrong turn, and you overcorrect, and you maybe hit a tree or something. Okay, and then right into the drink you go. Okay, and there would have been more evidence of something like that, I think, because there just would have been. It just doesn't make sense. If you watch the video footage, if you're interested, there's just something that doesn't add up here. This car is like way off the road, off a beaten road here. And it turns up in this reservoir, okay, but it just seems like there's a lot more to it than what meets the eye at this point. And it could very well simply be that, yeah, maybe they hit a tree and they traveled 100 yards or 50, however long it was into the drink, but then the car was upside down. Upside down. That doesn't quite. Well, I guess if it floated. If it floated and then it eventually capsized, I guess that makes sense, kind of. But again, if the kid, if you think about it, if the car goes into the water and it's, it doesn't sink like a rock right away. It's going to be taken in water, unless the windows were open, and maybe that could have. But then again, if the windows were all, I don't know. lot of unanswered questions at this point. So anyway, but again, if it truly is this young girl and they found her, at least the family is going to have some closure. And I've been pretty harsh with, the Nevada County Sheriff Search and Rescue people because, if it hadn't been for AWP, obviously these incompetent guys and gals wouldn't have found it. It would have been maybe decades later. Oh yeah, we remember this girl. Yeah, here she is. Well, what left? Well, rusted out old car, and gee, I wonder how we missed this one. Again, I'm not trying to be disparaging of law enforcement, but at the same time, these guys checked that area supposedly, several times. I guess they said 2 or 3 times. Really? You didn't do a very good job, guys. And again, I think it's the leadership that is really, I call into question because anyway, there's a lot of clowns out there, that's for sure. Anyway, so that's my take on that one. One of the things I was going to talk about, a little bit more kind of an introspective kind of a video this evening. Let me get me old pipe going again. Oh, and why are you doing that? That's nice. Oh, I think I told you about this Dunhill that I got in that tinderbox. I think this is the last Dunhill I bought. It was 3 years ago. This was it didn't have a price tag on it. And there's a young guy, probably in his late 20s, early 30s. And so I said, hey, this doesn't have a price tag on it. And it's looks like it's a shell briar. Maybe I don't know if it's a root briar, but it's a nice shell briar, I guess. Sandblasted. It's a newer Dunhill. You can tell because they're a little thinner. But still, for a new Dunhill, we're talking maybe $450, $500. So the guy, I guess he felt that, he was going to be a little hard-nosed. And he says, well, yeah, that's a nice pipe, mister. I don't know if I can let it go for anything less than $250. I said, $250? And he goes, I'm sorry, but I can't make any less. And I went, oh. I said, well, I guess it's okay. I felt like I kind of took advantage of him. I said, that's a Dunhill. $250? Sold. So anyway, that's what he asked for it. And I just said, well, okay. You got me over a barrel, buddy. I was grinning all the way home. $250 for a Dunhill? Brand new Dunhill? Oh my goodness. So I kind of feel that I took advantage of him. Maybe I should have said something, but I wasn't like I stole it or changed the price tag, like you do, some people do in their department stores, they kind of like, oh, change the price tag over here. And, okay, there you go. Hey, have you ever done that? I don't know if I've ever did that. I wonder if I did that as a kid. I can't remember specifically, but I know that I probably did something like that when I was 10, 12, 13 years old. I remember I used to love building models like ships and tanks and planes. Never much of a big car guy. I did a couple of cars. But I was just really into more like military vehicles and things like that. And I kind of remember there might have been a time where there was a model kit that might have been like, I used to mow lawns for my spending money, things like that, before I got a paper route. And I'm sorry, maybe 11 or 12. And I vaguely remember I was at the Alpine Market number 2. Number 1. There was Alpine Market number 1 on Highway 49. Now I think it's something else now, clearly. But I remember I was going out there mowing lawns for this guy, and I remember, on my way back, that I would stop there because they had model kits. Oh, I just love those model kits. Some of them were just, and the pictures that they would paint on these model kits were just so romantic, They were just full of action and drama and atmosphere. Like, they would show an aircraft carrier model, and they'd show all the action that was going on, with that aircraft carrier, and the planes landing and taking off in the blue sky, and oh man, just awesome stuff. And I vaguely remember I didn't have enough money, and I'm sure I did that at least once or twice, where I changed the price tag to accommodate what I had in my pocket. And yeah, I was a hardened criminal back then. But anyway, I do remember, and the reason why maybe I'm telling you all this is because I just got through watching, and maybe many of you probably were also big fans of Better Call Saul, which was the spinoff to Breaking Bad. And so the character, Jimmy McGill, a.k.a. Saul Goodman, later. And then the last character, I guess he was a Gene Torkovich or something like that, who was kind of like in a witness protection program somewhere in Minnesota, I guess, and he was managing a Cinnabon, anyway. So anyway, but the bottom line is that this was an interesting TV show because it just had really good writing, excellent writing, and great character development. One of the things that people really just felt cheated on when it came to like the Game of Thrones season finale or the last season of Game of Thrones was that whoever had been writing all these characters up until that point, either they got fired, they went on vacation, they had amnesia or whatever, because then all of a sudden the characters started acting weird. It's like, wait a minute, they wouldn't do this, they wouldn't say that, they wouldn't, do these kinds of things. It's completely against their character. And people kind of began to figure this out, and that's one of the things that was so awkward and disappointing about Game of Thrones, those of you who watch Game of Thrones, is it was like what they did was they did the old Dallas. Some of you are my age and a little older, a little younger, remember the little sleight of hand in I didn't watch Dallas that much. I think I may have watched, maybe 4 or 5 episodes. I just never got into it. But apparently one of the seasons ended with JR being shot. And you're thinking, well, my gosh, and now they're telling you that they're going to have another season? How are they going to do that without JR? And so the opening season shows the last season where he's shot, and oh my gosh, and then it turns out that it was all a dream. Now, you can do that once, and people might go, okay, all right, you got me, all right. Shame on me, I fell for it. But when people kind of revert back to that kind of sleight of hand, cheap ass, writing style, well, it's not really a style, it's just lazy, it's irresponsible, you're not even, it's a gimmick, And I think that people see through that and it's like, what are you guys doing? But this Better Call Saul had a pretty good team of writers, and they really, really wrote these characters. Boy, some of the things that they were able to create were just so intricate and so fascinating. A lot of times they'd open up with somebody just doing something innocuous, like building something or making something. You go, what has this got to do with anything? And then it turns out that they make this, I remember this one scene not too long ago, they make this kind of like a plaque thing, a little not ceramic, but a little, memento kind of a thing. And they show the person, laying out the plans for this little trinket thing that they're making. And you're going, what in the heck is all that? And it turns out that it's kind of like a MacGuffin kind of a thing, but it turns out that it's now this thing that needs to be found in order to complete, the character's understanding of some other thing. And I go, oh, okay. But it's so intricate, but yet so well written. And so one of the things that I even mentioned this in my little homily this weekend, I said, a lot of the things that the writers did, they kind of were, they kind of set you up when it came to the characters, because they knew that they could play upon your predictable ability to stereotype people, which I thought was very fascinating. It's very psychological. It's like they talking about breaking the fourth plane. It's almost like they're breaking the fifth plane. It's like they're really going into your head, and they know it. And they would just, they would play upon these stereotypes, knowing that you're going to now use your own stereotypes to figure out, okay, this person is that way. And one of the characters was actually, his name was, what was his name? Howard Hamlin. Okay, he was like the CEO of Hamlin and McGill law firm. And Howard comes across in the beginning and then several seasons as this very successful, nice-looking, articulate, well-dressed, as some people would say nowadays, privileged character, which you instantly dislike, and but that you takes 7 seasons, and kind of like one of the last few episodes to find out that this is really a very decent human being. He's not a jerk just because he's successful, just because he's good looking, just because he's the CEO of this company or this law firm. He worked in his own way, and he was a good person. And at the very end, until he has a tragic ending, it's sad to say, but oh man, talk about a shocker. That was oh my gosh, real shocker of an ending for the character, and he didn't deserve it, that's for sure. But it turns out that he was really just a decent person who was just trying to live his life. Just because he was successful didn't make him a jerk. Because most times the stereotype is, well, if you are nice looking and you're successful and you're privileged, then you're an a-hole. Well, no, you're not. Doesn't mean you're an a-hole just because you're successful. But that's how they played on people, to employ their own stereotypes and their own prejudices. And then at the end you feel like a real chump because you go, well, I was wrong about that guy. Boy, clearly wrong. And then the Jimmy McGill character, is so interesting. And this is where it gets maybe a little personal. It's just sort of like, well, why is this character intriguing? Now, is the Jimmy McGill character an evil person? Well, the answer to that real simply is no. But he really is a guy who likes to just take shortcuts. And he also is very vindictive. We find that out, we kind of watch him go through this. And again, you give him, it's so funny because the writers probably knew this. They did this intentionally. He's like, well, he's going to try to get back at the Howard Hamlin, the guy that's really professional and everything. And we're going to see him basically play a lot of tricks on the other guy. This Jimmy McGill character to play tricks on this guy to get back at him and all that, because you assumed, because they kind of let you fill in some of the blanks, that the guy was a real jerk and he deserved, he didn't deserve his position in life. He didn't deserve to be privileged. He was a jerk and he was a bad guy because, like I said, in the end you find out, oh my gosh, that was the wrong conclusion. And you feel, and if you held the like a lot of us did, I know I did, it was like, well, because he's successful and he's privileged, he deserves to be taken down a few pegs. Well, I don't know why I would think that. I wouldn't think that about a real person in real life. Especially if they were truly a real jerk, I'd say, well, they'll get their comeuppance someday. But this character wasn't really like that. But again, they played on stereotypes. And they kind of led you down this little primrose, dead end thinking, oh yeah, this guy's a jerk and he deserves all the bad things that he's going to get coming to him. And he doesn't. Yeah, it's very tragic and shocking because the guy, he starts basically, he has a confrontation with this Jimmy McGill character. And he was saying, hey, I finally figured you out. You like messing with people. You like hurting people that are successful. And he goes, I never have done anything wrong to you. And it turned out, you find out later that he didn't. He didn't do anything wrong to him. In fact, he was trying to be kind of sympathetic in some ways, but it just, again. So I just thought it was just actually a very excellent, well-written TV show. And I don't watch a lot of TV shows, but that was one that I thought was worth my time. And again, great writing. But the thing about Better Call Saul was I kind of started watching it over again. I haven't watched the whole thing all over again because it's like 6 or 7 seasons. I don't have time to sit down and just binge watch, season after season. But I watched the beginning of it, and I kind of saw a whole different. Now that you see the end, and now the end kind of focuses you to watch for certain cues and things in the beginning, and you go, ooh. And this gets a little uncomfortable, but I guess I'll say it anyway. But I guess, and man, I'm sure I'm not the only one. Okay, but when you see it for the first time, a lot of people kind of, you look at the Jimmy McGill character and you see the underdog and you want to root for him. Okay, and in some ways, in my subconscious, I kind of said, why am I attracted or why do I relate to this person so much? I kind of, after the end and then going back and watching some of the original episodes, I went, oh my gosh, I'm kind of a Jimmy McGill. I mean, and maybe other people, if they're honest, would say, well, yeah, me too, Because the thing about the Jimmy McGill character, he's a lovable character in many ways, but he's the kind of guy that he wants to make a quick buck, and he's always taking these shortcuts. And he has this older brother named Charles, who turns out to be really when the villain would be probably not the right word, but he's the antagonist towards the Jimmy McGill character. You kind of get the impression because they're brothers in the beginning, he's the older brother, and you think that he's trying to mentor his younger brother, but deep down inside, we find out in the end that the older brother kind of resents the younger brother, because the older brother is a true law scholar as well as a lawyer. He really put in the time to learn the law and to, really champion it. Where Jimmy just kind of went through law school. A lot of people just go through college and they just, I remember I had an older brother and he tried to get his PhD, but he couldn't get his PhD because he was too much of a perfectionist. I mean, I've looked through some of his papers, and he was so hard on himself, and he was trying so hard. And I remember talking to this one guy, later when I was going through philosophy, I had to retake some philosophy courses, and I asked the guy, he's a PhD, and I said, so what was your dissertation? And he goes, hell if I know, I can't remember that far back. And I was scandalized by that because you don't remember your PhD thesis? I mean, really? He goes, oh, that was such a long time ago. I just was going through it's like it was just a checkbox I had to get the PhD. And now I got the PhD. I don't care about what I wrote in my thesis or even what it was. And I thought, man, my brother would, he'd literally be rolling in his grave if he had heard this guy say that. I mean, writing a PhD thesis is like next to giving birth, And so, but again, there are people that just go through the system. You kind of figure out how to, once you kind of get into that academic little turnstile, you kind of figure out, okay, I need to do this, and I'm done. Get the piece of paper and I'm done. And, and then sad to say, a lot of young people today, they've been kind of taught that, you need the sheepskin to get a job. And you find out, well, you know what, getting a PhD in underwater basket weaving or feminist studies isn't going to get you very far, okay? and then they get discouraged, and they get disgruntled, and they get bitter and angry because they've spent $60,000 on a degree that doesn't mean anything, let alone not even be marketable. And so because they were taught kind of like, they kind of were looking at it like a Jimmy McGill. Well, I got to get through this to get this. Instead of looking at an education, they used to say you go to college to learn how to read and write and think critically. That's really what an education was about. So whether you did it in science, you did it in academics, you did it in even military science. If you're going through ROTC, you're trying to learn something that's going to help you later in life, not just check a box, and that's where I think a lot of people have made serious mistakes with their quote unquote education. They didn't look at it as really getting an education. They looked at it as just some hurdle just to get over. And once you get over it, then you get your sheepskin or your diploma, your degree, and then you get the job. Because that's their whole reason, their whole goal was to get a job, a high-paying job. Because they thought, well, if you go to college, you get a high-paying job when you graduate. No, that's not true. So looking at the Jimmy McGill character, I kind of say, well, gosh, if I'm honest, I'm kind of they call him Slippin' Jimmy, because what he would try to do is to make money is he would have these slip and fall accidents and make other people think that they're responsible. Like, I guess he would walk out in front of a car and he'd have this little, apparently he had this little gimmick that he would fall just at the right time, and then the people would, apparently they think they hit him, and now he's got a dislocated hip or a broken leg or concussion or all the above, and now they've got to pay for his medical bills and all this stuff. So he'd make a quick buck doing that kind of stuff, or other scams. He'd make other scams. So when he found out that he could scam people to hurt people because he felt that they were unfair to him, or whatever, again, like, was he evil, like Dr. Evil kind of thing, something from a James Bond movie? Well, not really, but he was vindictive, and he was spiteful, and he was petty, and and yet there was this little bit of a charm. He had this lovable persona that I don't want to say made it seem okay in the end, but again, that's what's also, I think, is discovered too at the end of the thing, is that the guy, again, it's interesting because they bring him to the point where he's going to murder this old lady, and you think, oh gosh, he's going to cross that line finally. He really is a bad guy. And again, the writers could have done that and for real sensational, like, oh my gosh, did you see what this character did? But because it's not true to the character, he kind of, you saw him thinking about, if I silence this old lady permanently, then the cops won't come after me. And you can see him making this decision, like, yeah, I could take this old gal out and I might be solving my problems. But then you see him kind of like, nah, I ain't going down that road. So, he had a certain point where he was kind of a charlatan, the guy who was looking for the quick buck, somebody who was going to maybe, flim-flam you, but he wasn't a murderer, and he wasn't truly that evil. But he was very spiteful, and he was very vindictive, and he was a kind of a little crappy guy, at the very end, and I think that, and also at the end, he kind of redeems himself because he confesses. He's saying, I did these things, So, like I said, it was a very interesting arc, character development arc, and it rang true with the characters that was written for the last several years. And I think that's why it was kind of a satisfying ending. It was sort of like, yeah, the guy goes to prison. In fact, he could have, interestingly enough, it was interesting because, and again, I've only watched it once. I think maybe I've watched the last episode twice, maybe. But he had apparently a deal that he could basically get off with just 7 years. And then he could lessen that with time off for good behavior, and also maybe even some time served. So he was maybe looking at 5 years for the fraud and the theft that he had perpetrated. He was trying to, yeah, I think he was stealing, the last thing, he was stealing stuff from department stores and reselling it, okay? And then he was also going into bars and getting into these drinking contests, and he would, very shrewd, it appeared that he was drinking, drink for drink with these guys, and he was, drinking them under the table, but he wasn't really drinking. He had a little system where he would secretly suck up all the alcohol and make it look like he was drinking it, so the other guy would think, well, he's got to be as drunk as I am. And then he would start getting information out of the guy and find out where the person lived, and then later knowing that the guy was going to pass out, because I think he even put a little Mickey into one of his guy's drinks, knowing that he was going to be unconscious for several hours. He would just go into the guy's house and steal his financial information, and then later, get his credit card information, and then start, buying stuff on this guy's credit cards. Or whatever he did. He did the very intricate kind of a flim-flam scam kind of a thing. Anyway, but no, before you say, oh my gosh, you're stealing people's money and all that. No, I'm not doing that. I'm just saying that I know that I tend to want to take shortcuts sometimes. Okay, I think we all do. But that was sort of like the foundation of his character, is that instead of putting in the hard work and the long hours like his brother Charles did, he kind of wanted to find the quick and easy way. And I got to be honest, there are times that I have to say, at least I relate to that. I know that I'm going to be honest here. I remember in seminary, and again, I'm not bragging, I don't think, but I am being honest. My first year in seminary was horrendous because they were trying to kind of kick me out. And they thought, well, if they buried me academically, there's no way I'm going to survive. And I probably wouldn't have survived if technology hadn't come and saved my little tookus. Because the first year in seminary is when they started coming out with personal word processors. And it was a Smith Corona, and what it had were these little discs, these little floppy disks. And you could save all of your work on these little discs. And so the first 2 years, I did work my butt off because I had to. I was surviving. And so I would, write these papers, and I'd do the research, and I wasn't really good at it, but I mean, I got a passing grade. I think I got like a C+, or maybe the best I could do in my first 2 years was B-, something like that. And I struggled. I mean, I got through. In fact, one guy kind of said, they said, because being in the seminary, there was a clique, and if you didn't come from the minor seminary, I went to good old Sac State, okay? So, I mean, I actually did get a real degree and everything, and, I was just, secular school, secular university, college, whatever. And, I got my first BA degree, liberal arts, and, Bob's your uncle, right? But when you went to the seminary, a lot of the guys had gone through this thing called St. Joseph Minor Seminary. And so there was this little clique of guys that were kind of like all together, and then the guys that, like me, that were kind of on the outside. We were looking in, And so they kind of thought, they were suspicious of me because I came from a state university, first thing. And the other thing was that I was a little bit more, even though I didn't recognize it at the time, apparently I was just too much of a conservative Catholic for a lot of these guys that really wanted all the new progressive stuff. And they kind of saw me as, I wouldn't say a threat, but they just saw me as a kind of a throwback. So I just didn't fit in quite, socially. But anyway, so getting back to the Smith Corona word processor, so for the first 2 years, all my papers were all on those little discs. And I had a little box of these, these little discs. So when I came back, we had to do a pastoral year. And when I came back, they were kind of all over me again. Well, you're not quite, you're under suspicion. We're going to be watching you. And it's like, gosh, give me a break. So I remember just kind of thinking, well, hey, I've got nothing to lose. So I started looking at these papers, the second last 2 years of seminary, and all of a sudden it kind of dawned on me that a lot of the subjects that we had previously talked about 2 years ago, we were now in these more advanced courses. And I said, well, I remember writing a paper, kind of a paper on something along those lines. And sure enough, I'd get my little disk out and I'd call up the file and geek, and there it would show up on my little little dot matrix screen. It was little kind of this little green background, little black little ink letters, But I mean, you could read it pretty good, but it wasn't anything fancy, not like we have now. But I would go, well, that paper is very similar, and I thought, now if I wrote a new introduction and a new conclusion, what do you know? So I kind of said, well, I'm going to give it a whirl and see what happens. So I would kind of, read a few things, and then I kind of put together a few thoughts, and then I'd think, well, okay, so I'd write a new introduction and then new conclusion, and then I was done. And so I started turning in these papers, and I call it plagiarizing myself, essentially. And my grades started going up. Like I was getting really good grades. Now, it could have been that some of the professors had kind of, not all of them, but some of them had kind of like, you know what? He's already been through the ringer. Let's give him a break. Let's help him get through this thing. There were some that were like that, I will admit. The first 2 years, they were pretty much, nah, you're going down, buddy. You're going down. And when I didn't go down, that was like, they were kind of like, But the second 2 years, my last 2 years, I think they kind of, not everyone, but there were more people that were willing to give me, were willing to give me the benefit of the doubt. Like, okay, he's putting in the work, But the funny thing was that, yeah, I'd done the work previously, but then I was just kind of rehashing, plagiarizing myself, and I got through. But I was cutting corners, basically. I was finding the quick, easy way. And I kind of laughed at it because, I was like, I'm going to enjoy my last 2 years. And that's when I discovered single malt scotch, And I'd be working at night and drinking, kind of like maybe a little liquid lubrication for the old mind there. And I would, maybe write something a little more, I don't know, poetic or something. I don't know, but the next morning at 5:30 in the morning, I'd brew up a big pot of coffee and press the print button and go to the shower and come back and zip, and I'd turn in the paper, and a few days later I get a B+ or an A-, and I'm going, oh, I didn't do any work on that. I mean, I just did a couple of little sleight of hand things, and there you go. So I don't know. The old saying is work smarter, not harder, but again, I felt like I was taking a lot of shortcuts, Not that I did anything truly fraudulently, like plagiarized some other person or, stole somebody's intellectual property, nothing like that. But I clearly knew that I was not. The first 2 years I busted my butt. The last 2 years, in fact, I even worked in a TV station we had a Catholic TV station, and I remember being totally bored out of my gourd between drinking single malt scotch and watching reruns of All Creatures Great and Small, one of my all-time favorite TV shows, and just kind of thinking, well, maybe I'll get through this after all. I don't know. So I just remember that's how it would work. I'd work maybe, like I said, I'd read a little bit of the course material, come up with some ideas, and new introduction, new conclusion, but I kept the same basic. I kind of proved that, well, at least one thing I know for sure. This grading thing is totally subjective because the guy that gave me a C-, 2 years ago, somebody's giving me an A- now. Now, you might say, well, okay, but and I had an English teacher who told me, he says, the secret to good writing is rewriting. So maybe that's what it was. Maybe I was learning how to write at an academic level, and maybe that's all it was. I was finally figuring it out. Okay, this is what I need to write, and this is how you need to write it. Because I remember I was really meticulous about my proofreading, because I'm a horrible proofreader, as somebody knows watching this video. But I learned kind of how to, and I'd have some people, hey, can you read this for me? It's like, so maybe that had a lot to do with it as well. I had a little bit more, it maybe not had the great content, but it was polished. So it might look good, it might even read well, but it's like, well, he didn't really come up with anything brilliant or new, me, no, I'm not a first-rate thinker. But, but anyway, so, but again, when I was watching Better Call Saul, I said, well, I kind of did some of the Slip and Jimmy kind of stuff, let's see, defrauding people. Yeah, unfortunately, being a padre, sometimes people want to give you things, and we had my first couple of years, I wouldn't say I intentionally manipulated or took advantage, but there were some parishioners that just I was kind of unprepared for this, but they wanted to give me lots of things. I remember this little Japanese lady. She was a sweet little lady, but she couldn't give me enough stuff, and I don't know if I actually manipulated her to give me things that I really wanted, but she would always give me things, and sometimes they were quite nice, and I would say, "Oh, gee, thank you so much," but again, it was like I just never did feel really right about taking people wanting to give me stuff, and again, I've known a couple of my priest friends, brothers, who I would say kind of did take advantage. They would like, I'm going to tell so-and-so that I need this new computer and they'll buy it for me. And I remember one guy saying that. I go, that's not right. Well, they want to bless me. What's wrong with letting them bless me? I'm going, you're manipulating them, So anyway, but that's something so again, I mean, I'm not perfect. Golly, no way. I certainly have been, I have unfortunately had my share of, not being totally above board with people and not totally, like I said, manipulating, but yeah. Well, and I look back now and say, well, I wouldn't do that now because it crosses a line, you take advantage of people, and now I'm kind of just almost, some people kind of get mad at me because they kind of, well, we'd like to help you. I said, no, I'm perfectly fine. I can do it myself. I almost got myself in some trouble last week because trying to change some lights out in the church, and I have this wonderful ladder. Got this wonderful ladder. I can go all the way up to 16, 18 feet in the air and change light bulbs. That's not the problem. The problem is manipulating and getting the ladder set up correctly in the church, and I almost broke a whole bunch of light fixtures the last time because I couldn't quite. I guess I'm losing a little bit of strength, and I thought I could do something, and I barely got, it's like I told a friend of mine, I said, I think I need to start asking for some help when it comes to the ladder because I couldn't set it up by myself this time. It was like, I did, but barely, okay? And in fact, when I was bringing the ladder down, it came down pretty hard. It almost hit one of these old light fixtures that are probably over 100 years old, and it would have been almost impossible to replace that chandelier. And then we would have been looking at probably $30,000 because we'd have to replace all of them. Ooh. But anyway, but yeah, and then in some ways there's kind of a little bit of that too, because like, well, I can do it myself, and anyway, it's one of those awkward things. Oh my gosh. I'm almost done. I think I am. Yeah, okay. I don't know what it is, but I get to about 58 minutes and I'm done. So it's 58, 35, 36. Holy Smoking Pipe Padre saying, thanks for watching. Light up your world, light up your pipe, and we'll see you in the next one.